In this video, we're going to start looking at the callbacks that NextAuth provides us. We have a JWT callback, which stores all the data as a cookie on the client. Our entire schema, our user schema, it stores it on the client. And we will also check out the session callback, which takes in the token that we returned from the earlier client. And we can do things to our session, whatever we want to do, and then access it on our client. I know it sounds a little tough right now, but I will just explain it to you as we go. First, let's change the strategy. Session strategy JWT. Now our NextAuth knows that we'll be using JWT. Next, let's try callbacks. In this callback, let's try an async session. Now, in each callback, the thing about each callback is that whenever we have a callback like this, and JWT doesn't have a session, it has a token. In the session callback, we can do something to the session object that we will be accessing right here, and show it right now. So let's return it at the end of the session, and it will not cause any errors because the session callback wants us to return a session. Over here, we'll be doing something to the session. Similarly, in the JWT callback, we will return the token at the end. And before that, we can do something with the token. So for example, let's console log it right now. Let's go to our inspect element. Let's go to application. Let's check out our cookies. And you can see that auth variables. So let's clear all our cookies. Let's refresh it. And now we don't have a session anymore. Now that we don't have a session anymore and we don't have any JWT token to refer to find out which user is logged in, let's console log the JWT. Let's sign in. Now, as you can see on my terminal, we have the token right here that we console logged right here. So, as you can see, it has everything about my account in my token right here. It has my name, email, picture. And similarly, if we log the session right here, we will also find that right here, similarly, it has the same things, except it has a user object inside the session and it holds the 3 fields right here. Now, the thing is, whenever we call this function, right now the JWT and the session have the same things, right? But whenever I call this thing, I also want a username to be added to my user object. So let's go to our schema and add a username. Now our schema has a username as well. Our user object has a username. But the thing is that this will not be forwarded to our database right now. Let's forward it to our database real quick. Let's run yarn db generate. And then yarn dd push the new changes. Now, if we refresh this page, now user, as you can see right here, the user has a username as well. It is empty right now, but that's exactly what we're going to deal with right now. So once our databases align with our schema in our code, now we can check out the token right here. Use the token's ID. So let's see what token has. We will use the token's email to get the user from the database. So now that we have the email, email is going to be a string. Now, using this email, we will try to retrieve our user from our own database right here. So let's try and do that. Const db user equals to array db.user. Let's see that db.select from users. Let's import the users from our schema where get the equality condition from Drizzle ORM itself. Let's do that. The user's email should be equal to the email, which will be a string. So right now we should have access to our user, and if we don't have access to our user, we need to get the ID of the user that is logged in right now when this JWT callback is called, and attach it to the ID to the token. So token.id equals to user.id. But we don't have the user. We can get it from the JWT callback itself. And then immediately return the token. Now, if the user doesn't have a username, and our DB user, okay, I forgot about this. The thing is that when the DB user is fetched from the database, it is an array. So we need to get the first element of that array to get access to the user. So we can put this in a bracket, and then we can index this by 0. And then if DB user doesn't exist, do this. So we are accessing the first element of the array, and then we'll have access to the username right here. If the username doesn't exist, then I guess you have to update the user in the database itself. So we can update users and set the username to, I guess, Nanoid. Then we don't have Nanoid right now. Let's install it. And then at the end of this whole process, we can just return the token. We will be returning the token, but we will return the user itself. So we'll return the ID of the user, we'll return the email of the user, we'll return the username of the user, we will return the name of the user, and we will return the image of the user. Let's do that. And then, as you know, this JWT callback will return a token, which will then be forwarded to the session right here in this token. So let's see if we are getting the token in the session right here. Let's not console log anything in the JWT callback, but console log in the session callback. So when we access the session over here, we should get a console log, and hopefully the token that we receive in our session should have everything that we had. Alright, so we just had to restart the server, and as you can see, the token has everything. The token has all our values, but the username is still null. Alright, so the username seems to be still null. Let's try that again. Let's refresh it, and as you can see, that was the first callback. So the username was null because we hadn't updated the username still. So that's why it was null. After we updated it, we refreshed it, and then now we have a username. As you can see, username is null. Username is a random 10-character nano ID. I like to call it nanoid. But the thing still remains that the session doesn't have these things. These things only exist on the token still. So let's add some of these things that we will need on the session. These things should be returned to us right here. So we can go to the session, we can remove this console log, and we can see if the token exists, if the token really does exist. As you can see, GitHub Copilot is really good at guessing what I'm about to do. So this is exactly what I'm about to do. Sessions ID should be changed to token ID, but this is one mistake that GitHub Copilot made. Session has a user object that has all these properties. So instead of this, we should get all of this. So user should have an ID, username, email, image, name and image, everything. But as you can see, there are TypeScript errors right here. And you might be thinking, what do we do about that? Well, we can go to our main source file. We can create a new types folder. And inside this types folder, we'll create a nextauth.d.ts. In this nextauth.d.ts, we are going to do this. I'm going to copy and paste it from here. And what is happening here is that we are declaring types for the packages that we are using. in NextAuth and NextAuth/JWT. We are declaring a module of types for it. So we are defining what the session will look like. We are defining what the NextAuth/JWT will look like, everything. So this session right here is this session that we are declaring right here. We are adding a few things to the session. We are appending it. So we're using the earlier user object that we were using, which is name, email, and image. And we are adding an ID, we are adding a username and a name to this object right here, so that we don't get any errors. Let's go over here. The image still doesn't seem to be. Let's do that. And now as you can see, it refreshed and it has all the things that we want from our JWT token. In our session itself, we have the name, we have the email, we have the image, we have the ID, and we have the username itself. That's pretty much it for this video. I just had to explain to you how callbacks work. And yeah, that's about it. See you.